The refugee station smelled like fear and metal. Lieutenant Una Park had been on many space stations before, but none quite like this one. The air was thick with the sounds of crying, shouting, and the endless hum of machines trying to keep everyone alive. She walked through the crowded halls with a datapad in her hand. Her job was simple. Count the medical supplies. Make a list. Report back to her ship. Nothing more. Nothing less. The UESS Horizon waited in orbit above, and Captain Choi wanted the report by evening. Una planned to finish quickly and return to her comfortable bunk where she could drink coffee and read her book in peace. Around her, hundreds of aliens moved in every direction. Most of them were Valori, small furry creatures that stood about waist-high to a human. They had large eyes, soft ears that moved with their emotions, and thick fur that ranged from silver to deep brown. Before the attack on their colony, they had been a peaceful species known for their kindness and strong family bonds. Now they were refugees, lost, scared, broken. Una tried not to look at them too closely. It was easier that way. If she looked, she might feel something, and feelings made the job harder. She had learned this lesson many times in her 5 years of service. She turned down a narrow corridor that led to Storage Bay 7. The main halls were too crowded, so she took the back routes. Here, the lights flickered, and cargo containers were stacked in messy piles. Some had fallen during the rush to unload supplies. That was when she heard it. A small sound, like a whimper, like something very small and very afraid. Una stopped walking. She looked around but saw nothing. The sound came again from somewhere low to the ground. She followed it carefully, stepping over broken crates and torn packaging material. Behind a fallen container, pressed into a tiny gap between the metal wall and a stack of boxes, she found her. A Valori cub. Very young, perhaps only 3 or 4 years old by human standards. Her fur was gray with white patches, covered in dust and dried blood that was not her own. Her large eyes, golden like autumn leaves, stared up at Una with pure terror. She was alone. Una felt her heart squeeze tight in her chest. She had seen many sad things in her career. Destroyed ships, dying soldiers, planets burning from orbit. But something about this small creature, hiding in the dark like a forgotten toy, broke through all her careful walls. She crouched down slowly, making herself smaller. The cub pressed harder against the wall, trembling. "Hey there," Una said softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The cub did not understand her words. Valori spoke their own language, and this one was too young to know the common galactic tongue. But perhaps she understood the tone, the gentleness. Una had learned long ago that kindness sounded the same in every language. She reached out her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. The cub flinched but did not run. There was nowhere to run anyway. For a long moment, nothing happened. Una waited. She was good at waiting. In her experience, scared creatures needed time more than anything else. Then, slowly, the cub leaned forward. Her small nose twitched as she sniffed Una's hand. Una knew she probably smelled strange to the little one. Human scent was different from Valori scent. But she hoped that different did not mean dangerous. The cub sniffed again. Then again. Something in her golden eyes changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Something like hope. "That's it," Una whispered. "See? I'm not so bad." She carefully pulled a protein bar from her pocket. It was her lunch, saved for later, but the cub needed it more. She unwrapped it slowly and held it out. The cub stared at the food. Her nose twitched faster. Una could see the hunger in her eyes, the desperate need that went beyond politeness or caution. The little one snatched the bar from Yuna's hand and ate it so fast she almost choked. Slow down, Yuna said, even though she knew the cub could not understand. There's more where that came from. She sat down on the cold floor, crossing her legs. She was not in a hurry anymore. The supply report could wait. The cub finished the protein bar and licked her small fingers clean. Then she looked at Yuna with those big golden eyes, and something passed between them. Something that did not need words. Yuna did not know how long they sat there. Minutes maybe, or longer. She talked softly about nothing important. Her ship, her crew, the book she was reading. The cub did not understand, but she seemed to like the sound of Yuna's voice. Her trembling slowly stopped. Her ears, which had been pressed flat against her head, began to rise. Finally, Yuna knew she had to leave. The captain was waiting. Duty was calling. She could not stay on the floor of his storage bay forever, no matter how much she wanted to. I have to go now, she said gently. But someone will come for you. Someone will help. She stood up slowly, brushing dust from her uniform coat. The heavy fabric was warm from sitting, and it carried her scent now more than ever. She took one step toward the corridor, and felt a tug. Yuna looked down. The cub had grabbed the bottom of her coat with both small hands. She was holding on tight, her tiny fingers buried in the fabric. Her golden eyes looked up at Yuna with a desperate plea that needed no translation. Please, do not leave me. Do not leave me alone again. Yuna's throat felt tight. Little one, I can't. She tried to take another step. The cub held on tighter and was dragged forward, her small feet scraping against the floor. She did not let go. She would not let go. Even if Yuna walked across the entire station, this tiny creature would stay clinging to her coat. Well, well. Yuna turned to see a man standing at the entrance of the corridor. He wore the uniform of station security, and his name tag read Taiho Kim. He was watching the scene with a mix of amusement and something softer. That's a level 3 bonding reflex, Taiho said, walking closer. Valori cubs do that when they've lost their family. They imprint on whoever makes them feel safe. He looked at Yuna with a knowing smile. Congratulations. You're stuck with her now. What do you mean, stuck with her? I mean exactly what I said. Once they imprint, they don't let go. Not easily. Maybe not ever. Taiho shrugged. You could hand her off to the refugee center, but he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Yuna knew about the refugee centers. She knew about the overcrowding, the lack of resources, the impossible odds for orphans. She knew that Valori cubs without families rarely survived more than a few weeks. Their bodies needed constant contact, constant warmth, constant love. Without it, they simply faded away. She looked down at the cub still clinging to her coat. So small, so determined. So utterly alone in a galaxy that did not care about one lost child. I can't just leave her here, Yuna heard herself say. Taiho nodded slowly. No, he agreed. I don't think you can. Yuna took a deep breath. She did not know what she was doing. She did not know how to care for an alien child. She did not know if the captain would allow it, or if the military would approve, or if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But she knew one thing for certain. This cub had reached out and grabbed hold of something, and Yuna was not going to let her fall. She bent down and carefully lifted the cub into her arms. The little one weighed almost nothing, light as a bundle of feathers and fear. She pressed herself against Yuna's chest and grabbed the coat again, just to be sure, just to be safe. Okay, Yuna whispered. Okay, I've got you. I've got you. And together, they walked out of the darkness and into whatever came next. Yuna named the cub Bomi. It was a word from her grandmother's language. from the old country on Earth that she had never visited but always dreamed about. Bomi meant spring. It meant new beginnings. It meant hope after a long winter. The name seemed right for a little creature who had survived something terrible and was now trying to start again. Life on the USS Horizon was not easy for a Valori cub. The ship was a military vessel, built for war and exploration, not for raising children. The corridors were hard metal. The lights were harsh white. The crew members walked with purpose and spoke in short, efficient sentences. But Bomi adapted in her own way. She followed Yuna everywhere like a small gray shadow. When Yuna worked in the medical bay, Bomi sat quietly in the corner, watching with her big golden eyes. When Yuna ate in the mess hall, Bomi sat beside her, nibbling on whatever food seemed safe for Valori stomachs. When Yuna slept, Bomi curled up against her coat, which Yuna now left folded at the end of her bed, just for this purpose. The coat had become important. It carried Yuna's scent, her warmth, her presence, even when she was not there. Bomi would not sleep without it. She would not eat without it nearby. It was her security, her comfort, her piece of safety in a strange and frightening world. The crew of the Horizon had mixed feelings about their new passenger. Some thought it was sweet. Ensign Minji Kang, who worked in engineering, often stopped by to bring Bomi small treats and make funny faces that made the cub's ears wiggle with confusion. Chief Dokyeon Beek, a large man with rough hands and a gentle heart, had quietly built a small bed for Bomi out of spare blankets and padding. But others were less welcoming. "This is a warship, not a nursery," said Lieutenant Commander Hyan, the second officer, during a staff meeting. "We could enter combat at any moment." "What happens to the creature then?" "Her name is Bomi," Yuna said firmly, "and I will take responsibility for her safety." "With respect, Lieutenant, you cannot take a child into battle." "I know that. I will find a solution." But Yuna did not know what that solution would be. The truth was, she had not thought this through. She had acted on instinct, on feeling, on something deep inside her that refused to leave a child behind. Now she was facing the consequences of that choice. 2 weeks after Bomi came aboard, Captain Jiwon Choi called Yuna to his office. The captain was a calm man in his 50s, with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too many battles. He was fair but strict, and he ran his ship with quiet authority. Yuna respected him deeply, which made this meeting even harder. "Sit down, Lieutenant," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Yuna sat. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating fast. "I have received 3 formal complaints about the Valori child," the captain said. 2 from department heads and 1 from the medical officer who says you are spending too much time on personal matters during your shifts. "Sir, I can explain." He held up his hand. "I am not finished. I've also received 7 informal messages of support, including 1 from Chief Beek, who does not write messages for anything, and 1 from Ensign Kang, who included a drawing of the child that I did not ask for, but apparently now own." Yuna felt a small flutter of hope. "The question I must ask you, Lieutenant, is simple. What is your plan? We cannot keep a child on a military vessel indefinitely. It is against regulations, it is dangerous, and frankly, it is not fair to the child. She deserves stability, a home, a future." Yuna took a deep breath. "I know, sir. I am looking into options. There are Valori colonies that might take her, adoption agencies that specialize in war orphans, maybe even, have you asked Dr. Lee about her medical condition?" Yuna paused. "What do you mean?" The captain's expression softened slightly. "Perhaps you should speak with him before making any plans. I believe he has some information that may be relevant." Yuna left the captain's office with a strange feeling in her stomach. She walked directly to the science lab where Dr. Sung-Ho Lee spent most of his time. Sung-ho was a thin man with thick glasses and messy hair that he never seemed to comb. He was brilliant with alien biology and terrible with human conversation. When Yuna entered his lab, he was staring at a holographic display of cellular structures, muttering to himself, "Doctor?" The captain said you had information about Bomi. Sung-ho looked up, blinking as if he had forgotten other people existed. "Ah, yes. The cub. Very interesting case. Very interesting indeed." He pulled up another display, this one showing vital signs and biological readings. Valori cubs who lose their parents typically die within weeks. It is not a disease or an injury. It is simply how their species works. They require constant emotional bonding to regulate their nervous systems. Without it, their bodies shut down. The heart slows. The breathing stops. They simply fade away. Yuna felt cold. But Bomi seems healthy. That is the interesting part. Sung-ho enlarged the section of the display. She is healthy. More than healthy. She is thriving. Her vital signs are strong. Her growth is normal. Her stress indicators are low. By all measures, she should be dying. But instead, she is flourishing. How is that possible? Sung-ho smiled, a rare expression on his serious face. "You, Lieutenant. You are the reason." Yuna stared at him. "I don't understand. Human body heat, heartbeat patterns, pheromone signatures. Your biology is different from Valori biology, but apparently it is close enough. When the cub is near you, when she holds your coat, when she sleeps against your warmth, her body responds as if she is with her own mother. You are keeping her alive." Yuna sat down heavily on a nearby stool. She had known that Bomi needed her, but she had not understood how deeply. She had not understood that her presence was the only thing standing between this little cub and death. "What happens if I leave her?" Yuna asked quietly. "If I give her to an adoption agency or a Valori colony?" Sung-ho's smile faded. The bond would break. Without a gradual transition period of many months, perhaps years, she would decline rapidly. The statistics for orphan cubs in such situations are not good. Most do not survive. That night, Yuna lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Bomi was curled up beside her, small fingers wrapped around the edge of the coat, breathing slow and peaceful. She smelled like warmth and safety, like home. Yuna thought about her career, her plans, the life she had imagined for herself among the stars, rising through the ranks, commanding her own ship someday. None of those plans had included a child. Certainly not an alien child from a species she barely knew. But here was the truth. None of that mattered anymore. This small creature had chosen her, had grabbed onto her coat and refused to let go, and in doing so, had changed everything. Yuna was no longer just a soldier, just a medical officer, just another human moving through the galaxy. She was Bomi's anchor, Bomi's safety, Bomi's chance at life. She turned her head and looked at the sleeping cub. So small, so trusting, so utterly dependent on a stranger who had happened to walk down the right corridor at the right moment. "I will not let you go," Yuna whispered. "I promise. Whatever happens, whatever comes, I will not let you go." Bomi's ears twitched in her sleep, as if she heard the promise and believed it. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the UESS Horizon continued its journey, carrying two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of places, bound together by something stronger than duty or regulation or even biology, bound together by choice, by love, by a coat that still carried the warmth of a moment when everything changed. Stories have a way of traveling through space faster than any ship. They move through trading posts and refugee stations, through diplomatic channels and military frequencies, through whispered conversations in dark corners and loud arguments in crowded halls. The story of Lieutenant Una Park and the Valori cub began as a small thing. A curious note in a refugee station's daily report. A comment between officers at a supply depot. A mention in a message sent home by a crew member who thought it was sweet. But small things grow, and this story grew very quickly indeed. Within 3 months, half the known galaxy had heard some version of the tale. A human soldier had adopted an alien orphan, not through proper channels or legal means, not through money or political advantage, but simply because the child had grabbed her coat and would not let go. Different species had different reactions to this news. The hegemony, a collective of powerful races who controlled much of the galactic center, saw it as a trick. Humans were young, aggressive, unpredictable. They had only been traveling among the stars for 2 centuries, a blink of an eye compared to civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. The hegemony did not trust humans, and they certainly did not believe that a human soldier would adopt an alien child out of pure kindness. "It is a political move," said Lord Vex, a hegemony diplomat, during a council meeting. "The humans seek to improve their reputation among the refugee species. They want allies against our influence." The Conclave of 12, an organization of peaceful trading species, had a more positive view. They debated whether humans should be granted special status as a compassionate species that could be trusted with refugee rights and humanitarian missions. The debate went on for weeks, with some members praising human empathy and others warning that it was too soon to judge. But the most important reaction came from the Valori themselves. The Valori High Council had governed their species for generations. They were wise, careful, and deeply protective of their people. When they heard that a human had taken in one of their orphan cubs, they were suspicious. They had seen too many species claim kindness while hiding darker motives. They sent a delegation to the UESS Horizon to investigate. The delegation arrived on a small, elegant ship that docked with the Horizon on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Captain Choi ordered full diplomatic protocols, which meant clean uniforms, polished floors, and everyone on their best behavior. Una waited in the docking bay with Bomi hiding behind her legs. The cub had grown in the past months, but she was still small, still shy around strangers, still most comfortable when she could feel the fabric of Una's coat between her fingers. The airlock opened, and the Valori delegation stepped through. There were 5 of them, all adults with silver and gray fur that spoke of age and wisdom. At the front walked Elder Karin, the leader of the High Council. Karin was ancient, with pale eyes that had seen centuries pass, and a quiet dignity that made everyone around them stand a little straighter. Captain Choi stepped forward with a formal greeting. "Elder Karin, welcome aboard the UESS Horizon. We are honored by your visit." Karin nodded politely, but did not seem interested in the captain. Those pale eyes moved across the docking bay until they found Una, until they found Bomi. The elder walked forward slowly, ignoring protocol, ignoring the other officers, focusing entirely on the human woman and the Valori cub pressed against her side. "So," Karin said, voice soft but clear, "you are the one." Una felt nervous, but she kept her voice steady. "I am Lieutenant Una Park, Elder. This is Bomi." Karin studied her for a long moment. "Your species is young, violent, unpredictable. You fight wars over resources and territory. You expand into space without wisdom or patience. Many in the galaxy believe humans are dangerous." Una did not deny this. She knew her species' history, the good and the bad. "So tell me," Karin continued, "why would you burden yourself with one of our young? What do you gain from this?" It was a fair question. Una had asked herself the same thing many times. She could have talked about duty or compassion or interspecies cooperation. She could have made a speech about human values or the importance of kindness. But instead, she simply told the truth. Because she grabbed my coat, Yuna said. And she didn't let go. That meant something. Corin's ears moved slightly, a sign of emotion that Yuna could not read. That meant something to you? Yes. What did it mean? Yuna thought carefully before answering. It meant that she chose me. Out of everyone on that station, out of all the aliens walking past, she reached out and grabbed onto me. Maybe it was random. Maybe it was instinct. But I don't think so. I think she saw something, felt something, and she made a choice. She looked down at Bomi, who was watching the exchange with wide golden eyes. How could I refuse that? How could anyone refuse that? Corinne was silent for a long time. The other members of the delegation watched and waited. Captain Choi and the Horizon crew held their breath. Then, slowly, Corinne's ears flattened against their head. Dr. Lee, standing nearby, recognized the gesture immediately. It was a sign of profound respect in Valori culture, an acknowledgement of something deep and true. Among my people, Corinne said quietly, we have a saying. The heart that holds on is braver than the hand that reaches out. Your cub chose you, human. She saw something in you that made her hold on when everything else was lost. Corinne looked at Bomi directly for the first time. Little one, the elder said in the Valori language. Do you understand what this human has done for you? Bomi nodded slowly. She had learned some words in the months since her rescue, enough to understand simple questions. And do you wish to stay with her? Bomi did not hesitate. She pressed closer to Yuna and grabbed the coat tighter. Corinne turned back to Yuna. The bond is true. The bond is chosen. By our laws and customs, this child is yours, Lieutenant. The High Council will not interfere. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not realized how afraid she had been until that moment. Afraid that Bomi would be taken away. Afraid that the Valori would not understand. Thank you, Elder. Corinne nodded slowly. Do not thank me. Thank the one who chose well. The elder looked at Bomi with something like warmth. She is small, but her heart knows truth when it sees it. The delegation stayed on the horizon for 3 days. During that time, Corinne watched Yuna and Bomi carefully. The elder saw how Yuna made sure Bomi ate first. How she adjusted her schedule to spend more time with the cub. How she learned Valori words and customs, so Bomi would not forget her heritage. On the last day, before the delegation departed, Corinne spoke to Yuna privately. The galaxy is watching you, Corinne said. Not just you personally, but your entire species. What you do with this child will shape how others see humanity for generations to come. Yuna felt the weight of those words. I'm just one person, Elder. I can't represent all of humanity. Perhaps not. But you are the one who was chosen. You are the one who held on. Whether you like it or not, you have become a symbol. A symbol of what humans can be. After the Valori left, Yuna stood at a window and watched their ship disappear into the stars. Bomi stood beside her, holding her coat as always. Did I do okay? Bomi asked in her small voice, using the human words she had learned. Yuna smiled and lifted the cub into her arms. You did perfect. You always do perfect. Bomi pressed her head against Yuna's shoulder and sighed contentedly. Somewhere out in the galaxy, the story continued to spread. But Yuna did not care about stories or symbols or what the galaxy thought of humanity. She cared about the small, warm weight in her arms and the tiny fingers that held onto her coat as if it was the most important thing in the universe. Because to Bomi, it was. And to Yuna, that was all that mattered. The distress signal came at midnight, ship time. Yuna was in her quarters, reading a story to Bomi before bed. It was one of the cub's favorite activities, listening to Yuna's voice even when she did not understand all the words. The sound was comfort. The sound was home. Then the alarm screamed. Red lights flashed through the ship. The intercom crackled with Captain Choi's calm but urgent voice. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Una moved fast. She had trained for moments like this, though she had hoped they would never come. She grabbed Bomi and wrapped her in a thick blanket, then ran through the corridors to the emergency shelter deep in the center of the ship. Stay here, she told Bomi firmly. Do not move. Do not open the door for anyone except me. Do you understand? Bomi's eyes were wide with fear, but she nodded. She was holding the coat, as always, her small fingers buried in the fabric. I will come back for you, Una promised. I will always come back for you. Then she sealed the door and ran to the medical bay, where she was needed. The situation was worse than she had imagined. A distress signal had come from Velori Prime, the homeworld of Bomi's species. A second attack was underway. 3 hegemony cruisers had appeared in orbit and were bombing the planet's defense systems. The Horizon had received the call because they were the closest ship capable of helping. The 3 against 1 were terrible odds, and everyone on the bridge knew it. Captain Choi stood at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display. The 3 enemy ships were large and well-armed. The Horizon was smaller, faster, but could not survive a direct fight against such firepower. This isn't our fight, crackled a voice over the communication system. It was the hegemony commander, speaking with the arrogance of someone who expected to win. The Velori harbored enemies of the collective. Stand aside, humans. This does not concern you. The bridge was silent. Everyone looked at the captain. Captain Choi did not answer right away. He looked at the tactical display, at the hegemony cruisers, at the planet below them where millions of Velori were dying. He thought about regulations and orders, and the smart, safe choice that would keep his crew alive. Then he thought about Bomi, hidden in the emergency shelter, clutching a coat that smelled like safety. Helm, he said calmly. Put us between those cruisers and the planet. Lieutenant Commander Hines stepped forward. Sir, we're outgunned 3-1. Our shields won't hold for more than I am aware of the mathematics, Commander. Execute the order. The Horizon moved into position, a small ship against 3 giants. A thin line of metal and courage between the hegemony and the Velori. The battle began. Una did not see most of the fighting. She was in the medical bay, preparing for wounded. But she felt the ship shake with every impact. She heard the alarms change pitch as different systems failed and recovered and failed again. She smelled smoke and burning metal and fear. The wounded started coming in quickly. Burns and broken bones. Shrapnel wounds and radiation exposure. Una worked without stopping, her hands moving automatically while her mind stayed focused on the next patient, the next injury, the next life that needed saving. At one point, the door burst open and Chief Beak stumbled in, carrying an unconscious crew member over his shoulder. Blood was pouring from a wound on his head, but he did not seem to notice. Engine room breach, he gasped. 3 dead, 4 wounded. We stopped the leak, but an explosion rocked the ship so hard that everyone fell. Una grabbed a medical table to stay upright. Somewhere in the distance, she heard screaming. Get on a bed, she ordered Beak. You're losing blood. No time. They need me back there. Chief, but he was already gone, running back into the chaos. In the engineering section, Ensign Minji Kang was fighting a different kind of battle. A second breach had opened in the hull, and atmosphere was rushing out into space. The emergency doors were damaged, refusing to close. If they could not seal the breach, the entire deck would lose oxygen. Minji saw what needed to be done. The manual override was on the other side of the breach, in the section that was already losing air. Someone would have to cross the danger zone and pull the lever. She did not hesitate. She ran into the breach area, feeling the air pull at her clothes, trying to drag her into the cold darkness of space. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. She reached the override lever and pulled with all her strength. The doors slammed shut. Minji collapsed on the safe side of the barrier, gasping for breath. When she looked down, she saw that her left arm was badly damaged, burned, and broken by debris. She would lose it. She knew she would lose it. But the ship was still flying. The crew was still alive. She closed her eyes and let the medics carry her away. The battle lasted 47 minutes. It felt like 47 hours. When reinforcements finally arrived, 5 human ships and 2 from species that had heard the distress call and chose to help, the hegemony cruisers retreated. They had expected an easy victory, not a fight. They were not prepared for humans who refused to run. Captain Choi stood on the bridge, surveying the damage. The horizon was badly hurt. Half the systems were damaged. 17 crew members were dead, and 43 were wounded. The ship would need months of repairs. But they had won. Valori Prime was saved. In the aftermath, as repair crews worked through the night, Elder Korin came aboard the horizon again. The Elder walked through the damaged corridors, looking at the broken walls and the exhausted crew, at the bloodstains that had not yet been cleaned and the empty stations where dead officers would never sit again. Finally, Karen found Yuna in the medical bay. She was still working, treating the last of the wounded, her uniform stained with blood and sweat. Bomi was beside her now, having refused to stay in the shelter once the fighting stopped. The cub was helping in her own way, bringing bandages and holding hands, offering comfort to strangers who had fought for her people. "You came for us," Karen said quietly. "You did not have to. Your government did not order it. Your regulations did not require it. You could have watched from a distance and no one would have blamed you. But you came. Why?" Yuna looked up from her patient. She was exhausted, more tired than she had ever been in her life. But the question deserved an answer. She looked at Bomi, who was watching the conversation with her big, golden eyes. "She is mine," Yuna said simply. "And that makes your people my people too." Korin's ears flattened again in that gesture of deep respect. "We will not forget this, human. The Valori will not forget what you sacrificed for us today." "It wasn't a sacrifice," Yuna said. "It was a choice. The same choice I made when I picked her up and carried her out of that storage bay. The same choice I will make again and again, as many times as I have to." She touched Bomi's head gently. "When you choose to hold on to someone, you hold on to everything they are. Their history, their people, their pain. That's what it means to love someone. You don't get to choose the easy parts. You take all of it, or you take none of it." Karen looked at the small cub and the human woman standing together in the ruined medical bay of a ship that had nearly died to protect strangers. "We have another saying," the elder said softly. "Those who shelter others become the greatest shelters themselves. You have become a shelter, Lieutenant Yuna Park. A shelter for my people. A shelter for your own. A shelter for anyone brave enough to hold on." Yuna looked around at the wounded and the weary, at the broken ship that was somehow still standing, at the cub who had started everything by grabbing a stranger's coat and refusing to let go. "I'm just holding on," she said. "That's all any of us can do. Hold on and hope it's enough." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the horizon, there was warmth. There was family. There was something worth fighting for. And that was everything. 5 years had passed since the battle at Valori Prime. 5 years of healing and building and growing. 5 years of change that had spread across the galaxy like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Commander Yuna Park stood on the observation deck of the new space station, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of stars. The station was called Unity, the first joint project between humans and Valori, a symbol of everything that had changed since a small cub grabbed a stranger's coat in a refugee station. Yuna was older now. There were lines at the corners of her eyes and gray strands in her hair that she did not bother to hide. She had earned every one of them through years of service, years of fighting, years of holding on when letting go would have been easier. But she had never let go. Not once. Are you nervous? Yuna turned to see Bomi standing beside her. But Bomi was not a cub anymore. She had grown into a young Valori woman, tall and graceful, with silver-gray fur that caught the light beautifully. She wore the uniform of the newly formed Interspecies Diplomatic Corps, a dark blue jacket with gold trim that suited her perfectly. And sewn into the collar of that jacket, barely visible unless you knew to look, was a small patch of worn fabric. A piece of an old coat that Bomi had never stopped carrying. A little nervous, Yuna admitted. Today is a big day. You will do fine. You always do fine. Yuna smiled. I remember when you could barely speak human words. Now you're giving me confidence. Bomi's ears wiggled with amusement. I had a good teacher. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. So much had changed, but some things remained the same. They still understood each other without words. They still found peace in each other's presence. The ceremony was held in the station's grand hall, a massive room with transparent walls that looked out into space. Hundreds of dignitaries had gathered from dozens of species, all dressed in their finest clothes, all here to witness something historic. The Conclave of 12 was officially recognizing humanity as a guardian species. It was a title that had never before been given to a race so young. Guardian species were responsible for protecting refugee rights, leading humanitarian missions, and helping weaker species in times of crisis. It was an honor and a burden, a privilege and a duty. And humanity had earned it not through military power or political deals, but through a single story that had spread across the stars. The story of a soldier who carried a child that was not hers. A child who refused to let go. A species that, when given the choice, always chose to hold on. Elder Corinne, now very old and very frail, was the one who presented the honor. The elder stood at the podium with dignity despite the weakness of age, and spoke in a voice that still carried authority. 5 years ago, I came to a human ship to judge the worth of their species. I expected to find selfish motives hiding behind kind actions. I expected to find a species that spoke of compassion but practiced calculation. Corin paused, pale eyes moving across the assembly until they found Yuna and Bomi standing together in the front row. Instead, I found something I did not expect. I found love without conditions. Sacrifice without expectation. The hand that reached out and never pulled back, even when holding on was painful and difficult and dangerous. The elder's voice grew softer. Among my people, we say that the heart which holds on is braver than the hand which reaches out. But I have learned something new in these 5 years. I have learned that the truest courage is not in the first reaching, nor in the holding, but in the refusing to let go. In the choice, made again and again each day, to keep holding even when the weight grows heavy. Karin looked directly at Yuna. Commander Park, you taught us what humans can be. Not through speeches or treaties, but through the simple act of picking up a child and saying, I will carry you, and then actually carrying her. Every day, for 5 years, through battle and peace, through difficulty and joy. Yuna felt tears on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. Today, we honor your species with the title of Guardian. But the truth is, you have been guardians all along. Guardians of a small, scared child who had lost everything. Guardians of a planet that was not yours. Guardians of a hope that the galaxy had almost forgotten. Corin lifted a small crystal, the symbol of the guardian species. On behalf of the Conclave of 12, the Valori people, and all species who have witnessed your kindness, I present humanity with this honor. May you continue to be shelters in the storm, hands in the darkness, and hearts that never stop holding on. The ceremony ended with applause that seemed to shake the stars themselves. Dignitaries came to offer congratulations. Politicians talked about new agreements and alliances. Reporters asked questions about the future of human-Valori relations. But Yuna barely heard any of it. She was looking at Bomi, who was looking back at her with those golden eyes that had not changed at all in 5 years. "Can we go somewhere quiet?" Bomi asked. Yuna nodded. They slipped away from the crowd, through a side corridor, until they found a small observation room that was empty and peaceful. The stars shone through the window, cold and beautiful, the same stars that had witnessed everything they had been through together. "You know," Bomi said after a moment of silence, "I don't actually remember grabbing onto you that first day." Yuna raised an eyebrow. "You don't?" "No. I was so scared, so confused. Everything was a blur. I remember hiding. I remember being cold and hungry. But I don't remember the moment I grabbed your coat." Yuna reached out and touched a small patch of fabric on Bomi's collar. It was worn soft with age, but it still smelled faintly of the past. "Maybe you didn't know what you were doing," Yuna said gently. "You were just a scared child, acting on instinct." Bomi was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head slowly. "No, I think I knew exactly what I was doing. I think I saw you there, kneeling in front of me, offering your hand, and something inside me understood. Understood that you were different, that you would not leave, that you were the one." She touched the patch of fabric herself, her fingers next to Yuna's. "I think I knew you wouldn't let go either." Yuna felt something break open inside her, something she had been carrying without knowing. All the fear and doubt and weariness of the past 5 years seemed to lift away, replaced by a warmth that filled every part of her. "I never would have," she said. "I never will." Bomi smiled, her ears moving in that expression of joy that Yuna knew so well. "I know. That's why I held on." They stood together at the window, watching the ships come and go, watching the station full of species who had once been strangers learning to be family. Somewhere out there, human ships were earning new names. Not warships, not traders, shelters, because wherever humans went, they carried their own with them and anyone brave enough to grab hold of their coat. The galaxy was vast and cold and dangerous. There would be more battles, more losses, more moments when holding on seemed impossible. But there would also be more moments like this one. Quiet moments of love and understanding. Moments when the weight of everything they carried together felt light because they were not carrying it alone. Yuna put her arm around Bomi's shoulders. Bomi leaned into her side, the way she had leaned 1,000 times before, the way she would lean 1,000 times again. "Thank you," Bomi whispered, "for not walking away." Yuna kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for holding on." Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, cold and distant and eternal. But inside that small room, there was warmth. There was family. There was love. And somewhere, in a museum on Valori Prime, there hung an old coat behind glass. A simple military coat, worn and faded, with a small hole in the hem where tiny fingers had grabbed too tightly. A plaque beneath it read, "The coat that saved a species. The coat that brought us together. The coat she refused to let go." Because in the end, that was the story. Not of war or politics or great historical movements. Just a story of holding on. Just a story of refusing to let go. Just a story of love. And love, as it turns out, was the only story that ever really mattered.